I was the most notorious rake in the capital, yet no one knew I was a woman. All the noble young ladies shunned me like the plague, all except the general's younger sister. She either invited me to cruise the lake today, or took me flower viewing tomorrow, afraid she'd fall hopelessly in love with me. I dragged her to a secluded spot and confessed I was a woman. Never did I expect her to heave a huge sigh of relief. I thought my brother had a taste for men. Turns out our ancestral grave is smoking with good fortune. 01. I was the legitimate son of the current Prime Minister, also the infamous #1 rake known to every household in the capital. I knew which restaurant in the capital served the finest wine. I also knew which brothel had the softest waisted girls. Any young lady with a shred of dignity would be mortified if I so much as glanced her way. They all say young Master Shen is dissolute, but in my eyes, you're the purest of them all. The top courtesan of Ichuan Lu lay in my arms, her words sweet as nectar. I raised a hand to caress her chin, curving my lips into a smile. Indeed, I'm the purest for you, my lady. We frolicked in the room for quite a while before someone knocked on the door. It was my maid, Luluor, who entered. Luluor hung her head. Young master, someone is at the mansion looking for you. Master told you to come back at once. I reluctantly pinched the courtesan's waist. I'll come back and devour you another day. The courtesan pushed me away bashfully, and I stood up with the motion. I let out a long sigh of relief only after boarding the carriage. Luluor, why are you so late today? I wiped the lipstick off my neck. If you'd come a little later, I wouldn't have been able to wrap things up. Luluor looked up at me. Young master, someone really is looking for you. The person looking for me was a young maid in green robes. I saw her standing in the middle of the main hall the moment I walked in. Where did this pretty little maid come from? I raised my hand to caress her chin, but my father coughed loudly from the front. The little maid blushed bright red with shyness. I'm a maid from the general's mansion. Our young lady was saved by young Master Shen outside the city a few days ago, and she sent me here today to express her gratitude, the little maid stammered. As she also told me to invite young Master Shen to cruise the lake tomorrow. As soon as the words left her mouth, everyone in the main hall stared wide-eyed, not to mention others. Even I was stunned to hear her words. All the noble young ladies in the capital shunned me like the plague. What's more, there was only one young lady in the general's mansion, the very one whose single flower ode had made her the toast of the capital, the general's only younger sister, Xie Huazhong. 02. News of Xie Huazhong inviting me to cruise the lake spread like wildfire through the capital in no time. I had no idea who spread it. I only heard someone say, that kid Shen Du dares to mess with Miss Xie. He's not afraid the general will split him in two with a single slash of his blade. Who said I wasn't afraid? I even had nightmares at night of Xie Huayu, brandishing a broadsword taller than me, splitting me in half. So I turned down Xie Huazhong's invitation again and again, to my surprise. She actually came to accost me. As the general's younger sister, a talented young lady, she stopped me right on the street. Why won't young Master Shen cruise the lake with me? She stood in front of me, asking softly. People quickly gathered around us. Before I could even speak, someone in the crowd started cursing me. What an injustice. All I did was reach out to pull Xie Huazhong when she was about to fall outside the city half a month ago. Seeing that I remained silent, Xie Huazhong narrowed her eyes and leaned in close. Could it be that your dissolute ways are all an act, and you actually prefer men, young Master Shen? I never expected her to say such a thing. All the words I'd prepared to politely refuse her vanished in an instant. Huazhong, a clear, cold voice rang out from behind then. Xie Huayu stepped out of the crowd, frowning slightly. Stop fooling around. He must have just come back from the military camp, still in his military uniform, making him look particularly tall, straight, and handsome. If I was the man all the women in the capital feared marrying the most, then Xie Huayu was the man all the women in the capital longed to marry the most. Not only was he a high-ranking official with unparalleled good looks, but the main reason was that marrying him meant not having to serve in-laws. Even I felt a little tempted upon hearing that. Xie Huazhong glanced at him, then back at me. Young Master Shen. I snapped back to my senses and said at once, I'll go. I couldn't let her think I really liked men. Xie Huayu turned to look at me, and my confidence immediately deflated by half. If he said a single no, I'd take the chance to back out at once. But he didn't. He took Xie Huazhong's hand and turned to leave, only saying, don't go back on your word, young Master Shen. Not going to slash me to death. 03. I originally thought the lake cruise would be just Xie Huazhong and me. I planned to caress her cheek, hold her little hand during the cruise, make her think I was a lecher, and never want to associate with me again. Never did I expect Xie Huayu to come too. If I dared to misbehave again, he'd probably chop off both my hands with a single slash. Watching him sit in the boat with an air of calm elegance, I only felt a cold chill run down my arms. Young Master Shen is here. Why not come in? He turned to look at me. I shivered all over. Is General Xie not on duty today? I forced a smile and stepped onto the boat. His eyebrows lifted slightly as he took a sip of tea from his cup. I'm on leave today. No wonder I thought there were more people on the street than usual. Xie Huazhong boarded the boat behind me and explained for him. I asked my brother to come. You don't mind, do you? Young Master Shen, how dare I mind? Not just me. Even my father wouldn't directly snub him. Of course not. I imitated the ways of literati, smiling at Xie Huazhong. It's my great fortune to cruise the lake with the general and the young lady today. Oh, is that so? Xie Huayu looked at me. I'd lived 18 years. Never had I felt so on edge, like sitting on pins and needles. I couldn't decide whether to say yes or no for a moment. Fortunately, Xie Huazhong quickly changed the subject. By the end of the lake cruise, the atmosphere between us had eased a lot. Xie Huazhong was not as delicate and gentle as rumored, perhaps influenced by her family background. Her words and manners were quite bold and unrestrained, right up my alley. Xie Huayu, on the other hand, wouldn't utter a single word for half a day. Just looking at him made me feel stifled, so I was especially warm and kind to Xie Huazhong, never expecting it to make her like me even more. She invited me to go flower viewing again before I left. Why did you agree again, young master? Luluo asked. I sighed. With that Yama Xie Huayu here this time, I couldn't act out. I'll take liberties with Xie Huazhong during the flower viewing, and I'm sure she won't invite me again next time. 04. Xie Huazhong invited me to go flower viewing outside the city on the 6th day of the 8th lunar month. I specially picked out a frivolous robe and even bought a box of gaudy rouge from the side of the road. Never did I expect Xie Huayu to be there again. Is General Xie on leave again today? I forced a smile. Xie Huayu looked up, scanned me from head to toe, and instead of answering, said, You're quite flamboyantly dressed today, young Master Shen. I shot a sidelong glance at Xie Huazhong. I like dressing like this on a regular basis. The ladies of Ichuan Lu say I look good in it. As expected, Xie Huazhong pursed her lips in disdain at these words. Naturally she'd disdain it. What chaste young lady wouldn't disdain a man who frequents brothels? Now that I'd said that, I decided to strike while the iron was hot and took the box of gaudy rouge out of my robe. I'm extremely honored that Miss Xie has invited me time and again. This small gift is a humble token of my gratitude. I opened the rouge and handed it to Xie Huazhong as I spoke. Xie Huazhong looked at the rouge, then at Xie Huayu. She also took the rouge with a forced smile. Thank you, young Master Shen. Things had been going quite smoothly up to this point, but for some reason, Xie Huayu glanced at the rouge and asked me, Huazhong and I came together, yet you only gave Huazhong a gift, young Master Shen. Do you have ulterior motives for my sister? This, swear to heaven. I gave it to her precisely because I had no ulterior motives. I didn't expect the general to come today either. I hastened to explain. He nodded. seemingly finding what I said somewhat reasonable. Just as I let out a sigh of relief, he said, "Then you can make it up to me now." I froze for a moment. Could he not understand human speech? In the middle of nowhere like this, how was I supposed to make it up to him? He raised his handsome eyebrows and looked at a jade pendant at my waist. "This jade pendant is clear and translucent all over." He really had the nerve to ask for the moon. That box of rouge cost no more than 10 coins. This jade pendant was worth 5 taels of gold. I slowly pulled the jade pendant off and handed it to him. Gritting my teeth, I said, "If the general likes it, it's yours." Then I'll be obedient rather than polite. Not the slightest hint of politeness. Shameless. And I even saved his life once. He didn't know it, of course, but now that I think about it, I should have let him die in that cave. 05. Flowers bloomed everywhere on the mountain outside the city. I heard a wealthy merchant had specially planted them in memory of his late wife. Fortunately, he never stopped anyone from coming to admire the flowers. As time went by, every spring and autumn, the literati and refined scholars in the city loved to invite others to come here to view the flowers, watching the men and women either reciting poems among the flowers or playing chess in the pavilions. Another plan formed in my mind. Since I couldn't lay a finger on Xie Huajong, then paying court to other women in front of her would work too. Young Master Shen doesn't seem to be in the mood for flower viewing today. Xie Huayu walked beside me and asked abruptly. It startled me. I'd forgotten he was a normal man too. Compared to the flowers here, those young and beautiful women are the rare scenery. I winked at him. "Don't you think so, General Xie?" He froze for a moment, his dark eyes flickering. "Flowers are flowers. People are people. How can they be confused?" He coughed and replied with unusual solemnity, "Liar." The tips of his fair ears were clearly flushed pink, but I couldn't be bothered with him, because I saw a familiar woman across the way, a lady from Qingyu Lu, it seemed. As long as I walked over and exchanged a few flirtatious words with her, I'd make sure Xie Huajong was mortified, and she'd never dare ask me out again. The thought made me giddy, and I lifted my foot to walk across. I'd taken no more than 2 steps when I tripped over a broken branch on the ground, losing my balance. I was about to tumble forward. The path had been swept clean, but there were still a few pebbles and twigs scattered about. Even if I didn't scar my face, a fall would leave me sore for days. Just as I gritted my teeth and squeezed my eyes shut, someone looped an arm around my waist and yanked me back up. I opened my eyes to find Xie Huayu's face inches from mine. He was so handsome, even more so than 2 years ago. Then Xie Huayu let out a laugh, and I jolted out of his arms in a fright. I watched him twirl his fingers. Young Master Shen's waist is rather softer and slimmer than most men's, it seems. 06. Xie Huayu's words kept me tossing and turning all night. "Don't worry, young master, not even the eldest palace maids could tell, let alone a general who spent all his days in the military." Luluor saw the dark circles under my eyes and hurried to comfort me. She used a jade hairpin and silver crown to pin my long hair high at the back of my head. In the mirror, a dashing young man appeared at once. No one who saw me would ever guess I was a woman. I let out a sigh of relief. "You're right. Even the maid by the Empress's side praised my good looks the other day." Luluor nodded. "Exactly." She went on tidying my robe. "Besides, I heard that since there are no women in the military, quite a few men have a taste for other men." Her words died on her lips as the folding fan I just picked up clattered to the ground. A taste for other men. My eyes flew wide open. It was fine until Luluor said it. Now her words brought Xie Huayu's remark rushing back to my mind. That was the very line I used to flirt with the courtesans every day, which meant Xie Huayu didn't know I was a woman, and he just flirted with me. Good heavens. The thought gave me nightmares for several nights in a row. Later, Xie Huajong invited me out a few more times, but I turned her down every time, claiming illness. I didn't step foot outside the mansion for the next half month. I didn't even go to the brothels or restaurants. terrified of running into that living Yama Xiaohuayu the moment I left the house. This unusual behavior finally drew my mother's attention. "Why haven't I seen you go out these days?" She sat in my room and asked before even taking a sip of her tea. I looked up at her and sipped my tea in silence. If I told her that Xiaohuayu not only preferred men, but might have taken a fancy to me, I'd scare her into having nightmares too. Seeing I wouldn't speak, she sighed. "Is it because of Miss Xie?" "It's because of her brother." "Don't worry, mother. I won't offend General Xie." I knew her worries and set down my teacup. "The general is much favored by His Majesty these days, and I know full well the stakes involved." She looked at me when she heard that, a faint trace of guilt softening her gentle features. I knew what she was about to say and cut her off at once. I joked, "Mother, Miss Xie has a wonderful personality and temper. You'd surely like her if you met her." To my surprise, she didn't smile. Instead, she looked even sadder. Just then Luluo came running in. The panic on her face filled me with a bad premonition. "What's wrong?" I asked her. She glanced at my mother and whispered, "General Xie is here." 07. Xiaohuayu was here. Luluo said he'd come to see my father and had been shown to the study the moment he entered the mansion. I thought the day would pass without incident, until I saw Xiaohuayu take a seat at our dining table. He sat across from me, exchanged a few words with my father, then looked up at me. "I heard young Master Shen has been unwell lately. Are you feeling better?" My hand slipped on my chopsticks. Everyone at the table turned to look at me, who'd been as fit as a fiddle, even climbing a tree and breaking a branch just the day before. I hurried to pick up the chopsticks that had fallen on the table and forced a smile at Xiaohuayu. "Thank you for your concern, General. It was just a little cough, and I'm fully recovered now." I felt a twinge of guilt and coughed twice for good measure. "The weather is turning cold. Young Master Shen should take extra care of himself." Everyone at the table glanced at the ice basin that had just been brought in, then at him. It was already the height of summer. There was not a hint of cold to be found. Even I, who'd never blushed when lying, thought his words were absurd. Yet he didn't seem to find anything wrong with what he'd said. He turned to exchange a few polite words with my father as usual, then picked up his chopsticks and began to eat. I didn't dare look at him again and hastily finished my meal, excusing myself. I only heard my father sigh helplessly behind me. "This boy has been spoiled rotten by his mother. Please forgive his manners, General." Xiaohuayu let out a laugh. "I rather think young Master Shen is straightforward and endearing." My foot slipped on the threshold, and I stumbled, nearly falling forward, frightened. I didn't dare stop for a moment and hurried away from this trouble spot. But I never, ever expected to see Xiaohuayu again. He stood with his arms crossed, leaning lazily against a pillar of the mid-lake pavilion. He called out to me as I turned to leave, "Young Master Shen." I froze, stiffly turning back with a forced smile. General, what a coincidence." Moonlight spilled down, coating him in silver, making him look peerless. His dark eyes, flecked with starlight, held a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "No coincidence. I've been waiting for you." I swallowed hard, silently cursing Luluo for being so unreliable. She told me Xiaohuayu had left, waiting for me. I turned to face him, but didn't step closer. He nodded and walked toward me. "In a few days, I will lead the army to war." He stopped in front of me, the words sudden and unexpected. I nodded vaguely, then looked up at him. Having not left the mansion for half a month, I hadn't heard a single whisper of this great news, but I couldn't understand why he'd come all this way to tell me personally. Unless my worst fears were true, if he was leaving, he'd be far from the capital, beyond the Emperor's reach. I gritted my teeth. "General Xie, I have a question to ask you." Do you like men? 08. The early summer wind carried a faint restlessness. As it brushed past me, it stirred a heat in my chest too. Xiaohuayu stared at me in stunned silence for a long moment after I asked the question. "I think you must have a misunderstanding of me, young Master Shen. amusement glinted in his eyes. I have no interest in men. I came to find you because I hope you will look after Huajong for me in the days to come. This battle I'm heading off to is fraught with danger. And she is the one I worry about the most. His words fell on my head, making it feel heavy as lead. I wished I could dig a hole in the ground and crawl into it at once. Young Master Shin has kept to his mansion these days. Xie Huayu bent slightly, his voice soft. It couldn't be because of this, could it? No. I looked up and denied it at once. I never expected him to be so close. My nose brushed his cheek the moment I lifted my head. I stumbled back several steps in a fright. Xie Huayu's eyes darkened, and he smiled, nodding as he straightened up. Then I entrust Huajong to you, young Master Shin. He smiled so beautifully, like a cold crescent moon floating on the rippling surface of a lake. I stared at him, dumbfounded for a moment, seeing I still hadn't spoken. He took another step forward. You are unwilling. No, I felt guilty, my voice growing quiet. The general is a man of great fortune. You will surely win a great victory and return safely. Please take good care of yourself. The smile in his eyes deepened, darker than the night. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. I will. He wasn't nearly as terrifying as the rumors made him out to be. Young master, Luluor circled from my right to my left, interrupting my thoughts. You really asked him that? It was fine until she brought it up. I stopped walking and shot her a bitter look. Don't spout nonsense like that ever again. If she hadn't misled me, I never would have made such a fool of myself. Fortunately, Xie Huayu was off to war. He wouldn't be coming to pester me anymore. 09. After that day, I returned to my usual carefree life. I just stepped out of Ichuan Lu that day, planning to take Luluor to buy her a box of rouge. I hadn't walked far when I saw a group of men cornering a woman in an alley, broad daylight, in the heart of the capital. I rushed to her aid, only to be beaten to the ground by the men in moments. Page. A scrawny thing like you trying to play hero and save the beauty. A burly man sneered at me. With that, they stepped forward to advance. I hurried to stand in front of the woman. I am Shindu, the legitimate son of the Prime Minister. How dare you lay a hand on me? You'll regret it. The men froze for a moment at my words. Everyone in the capital knew who I was. To my surprise, they came to their senses and dropped to their knees at once. I jumped in shock. Had my reputation become that fearsome? Before I could speak, the burly man said, Your Highness, you are to enter the palace to see His Majesty tomorrow. Stop your nonsense and come back with us at once. The woman behind me let out a cold snort and stepped out from behind me to stand in front. She looked back at me and smiled. Shindu, I'll remember you. By the time Luluor arrived with help, I was the only one left in the alley, a bruise blooming on my lip. I blinked. That was the Princess of Hawkin, who had entered the capital a few days earlier. A terrible premonition settled over me, a very terrible one. It wasn't until the next day, when my father returned home from court. Princess Shuya has come to the capital to form a marriage alliance with the great Jew. He looked up at me across the dining table. My hand shook on my chopsticks. A marriage alliance with the great Jew. The emperor had only 4 sons, all of whom were already married. He went on, I heard you met her outside the palace yesterday. I shot to my feet at once. Father, I want to join the military. 10. My mother was utterly against my decision to join the military. Am I really supposed to marry that Princess Shuya? It would be not only an act of treason, but a slight to the Mongolian tribes. Even the death of 9 generations of my family would be a light punishment. My mother knew full well the stakes, and for a moment she could not speak, tears spilling down her cheeks. I patted her back to comfort her. Not only do I know General Xie, but with father's reputation preceding me, no one in the military would dare to make things difficult for me. Don't worry, mother. Though I said the words, I was a little scared myself. After dismissing everyone, I hid under the covers and shed a few silent tears. I did not sleep a wink all night. Before dawn the next day, I walked into the military camp. By the time my father sent a letter telling me that Princess Shuya indeed wished to marry me, I had already left the capital with the army. His Majesty did not suspect a thing. Instead, he praised me for growing up and finally maturing. Don't celebrate just yet. Princess Shuya says she will marry no one but you. This was the last line in my father's letter. The smile that had lifted my lips fell at once. Just then, Xie Huayu sat down beside me. If you do not wish to marry Princess Shuya, there are plenty of ways to avoid it. Why join the military? I jumped in shock, then tossed the letter in my hand into the fire before me. Tongues of flame leaped up, swallowing the letter in an instant. A man's ambition lies with his country and his people. I joined the military to render meritorious service and bring peace to the common folk. Xie Huayu turned to look at me. After a long moment, he spoke. War is no child's play. Blades and swords show no mercy on the battlefield. There will be no horde of soldiers to protect you and help you win glory. I lowered my eyes slightly. I knew he resented how the soldiers had waited on me hand and foot these past few days, still treating me like the Prime Minister's young master, General Xie. I looked up at him, my tone more serious than ever. I am not treating this as a game, at the very least. Not anymore, not after seeing the displaced refugees by the roadside, suffering because of the war. I could no longer take this lightly. Xie Huayu stared at me in silence. The firelight flickered in his dark eyes. After a while, he stood up. Shendu, after tomorrow, if you try to leave, you will be a deserter. Do you know what being a deserter means? I stood up too, lifting my chin to stare into his eyes. I spoke each word clearly. I, Shendu, will never be a deserter. 11. Though I was the most notorious rake in the capital, I was also the Prime Minister's son. I had mastered all 6 arts of the gentleman that every young lord was taught. Not one was left unlearned. Archery, in particular, was my forte. No young lord in the capital could rival me when I shot an arrow straight into the bullseye. The soldiers watching around me cheered for me, everyone except Xie Huayu. He strolled over to me casually, took the bow from my hand, and caught an arrow handed to him by a soldier. With a single shot, he knocked my arrow out of the bullseye. The target split in 2. The soldiers who had been cheering for me fell silent at once. I looked up and glared at him. He did not meet my gaze, only tossed the bow back into my hands. Weak and feeble, even if you shoot an arrow into an enemy's heart, you may not kill them. I watched his retreating back, gripping the bow tightly in my hands. You just wait and see. For the next month, every day was either spent on the march or training my arm strength. By the time we reached the border city, I could lift a boulder a meter high. I could shoot an arrow straight through the bullseye, embedding it deep into the stone behind the target. Even Zhong Yi, the vice general who had doubted me at first, praised me as a rare military talent. Everyone except Xie Huayu, every time he passed me by, he shot me a cold glance. He was nothing like the man he had been in the capital, utterly insufferable, and the most infuriating thing of all, he refused to let me set foot on the battlefield. Why? I stood outside his tent, blocking his path. He was clad in armor, exuding an icy cold aura. This is a military order. He did not look at me, stepping around me and walking away without a second glance. I turned to chase after him, only to be held back by Zhong Yi. Shendu, military orders are like mountains, unbreakable. Those few short words left me with no room to argue. In the days that followed, the fighting on the front lines never ceased. I spent every day drilling, and nothing but drilling. Troops were sent out in wave after wave. They were carried back in batch after batch, wounded or dead. Every time I volunteered for battle, my request was rejected, until 2 months later, when Xie Huayu fell into an enemy ambush in Black Tiger Mountain. He went missing. When the news came, my arrow missed the target for the first time. The most urgent matter now is to find the general. Zhong Yi struggled to stay calm, beginning to deploy troops just as Xie Huayu would have. I stood in the corner and raised my hand. I will go find him. Everyone in the military knew I was the Prime Minister's son. No one could bear the consequences if I were injured or killed in battle. That was why Xie Huayu would not even let me step onto the battlefield. Zhong Yi turned to look at me, his first instinct to reject my proposal. Vice General, they're attacking while we're vulnerable. A soldier burst in then, gasping for breath as he reported the situation on the front lines. Time was of the essence. Xie Huayu only forbade me from fighting on the battlefield. You go to war, and I will go find him. This does not violate his military order. I pushed through the crowd and stood before the Vice General. If anything goes wrong, I will take full responsibility when Xie Huayu returns. 12. In the end, the Vice General still did not feel at ease, and insisted on sending a small squad of soldiers to accompany me. So many men, far too conspicuous. I took only 3 men with me, sneaking out of the city under the cover of night, heading straight for Black Tiger Mountain. 4 days on end, we scoured Black Tiger Mountain almost top to bottom. But there was no sign of him. If we go any further, we'll be in the territory of the Wu state. One of the men stepped in front of me to block my way. I stared at the city ahead, and a guess suddenly formed in my heart. You wait here. If I have not returned in 3 days, go back to the camp and say I am dead. Before the men could react, I turned and walked into the path ahead of them. Qiong City was a border city of the Wu state, garrisoned with troops and stockpiled with plenty of grain and forage. As such, entry and exit were heavily guarded. I traded a jade pendant with a peasant family outside the city for a peasant woman's clothes, and bargained with the gate guards for a long while before I was finally allowed to enter the city. Qiong City was not small. Finding a single person would be no easy feat. Staying the night alone. Madam, someone knocked on my door that night. The man was a stranger, with a hint of roguishness about him, yet I recognized him by his eyes. He was Xie Huayu, who had been missing for days. I came all the way into the city to find you, didn't I? I said, feigning a petulant pout, awkwardly playing the part. You've been gone for days. Have you abandoned me? He froze for a moment. Then he wrapped an arm around me and pulled me into the room. Do not be angry, my wife. Tomorrow I will take you to buy the prettiest rouge in the city. He stepped into the room as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He did not ask why I was disguised as a woman. He did not ask what I was doing here. He only lowered his voice, a faint edge of anger in his tone. Are you tired of living? Coming here. If you had not disappeared without a trace, I would not have had to come here. I lowered my voice too. For a moment, neither of us spoke another word. After a long while, the sound of the night watchman's gong rang out outside, and he raised a hand to snuff out the lamp in the room. Though I had been raised as a boy since I was a child, I had only ever been close to young ladies. To be left in the pitch black, sharing a bed with Xie Huayu. Before I could let my mind wander to those messy thoughts, an arrow suddenly flew through the window. Xie Huayu spun around and pulled me into his arms, shielding me with his body. In the pitch-black room, the only sound was our 2 ragged breaths. His warm breath fell on the top of my head, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Moments later, the clatter of chaotic footsteps rang out in the corridor outside. Go! Xie Huayu grabbed my hand, and we leaped out the window together, plunging into the icy cold river below. This was not his first time here. He had long planned an escape route. We followed the current to a small hole beneath the city wall, slipping out of the city without a hitch, without a hitch. So when Xie Huayu collapsed behind me, I was completely unprepared. 13. The same cave, the same severe injuries, the same raging fever that would not break. I let out a sigh. I really do owe you my life, don't I? I did not know when he had sustained so many wounds. The deepest was the one on his arm, a gunshot wound he had gotten shielding me just now. I had not expected it to be so deep, as if a piece of flesh had been gouged out with a knife. Only now did I understand that he had not been speaking idle words. My archery was indeed mediocre. This was the second time I had saved him, and I had gained a little experience. First, I found some hemostatic herbs and applied them to his wounds. Then I unbuttoned his clothes to cool his feverish body. If his fever still did not break by midnight, I would have to use that method again. I gritted my teeth, leaning down to warn him in a low voice, "You better pull yourself together." My words echoed off the cave walls, accompanied by the howl of a wolf outside the cave. I shrank back in fear, pressing close to Xiaohuayu's side. He lay there motionless, the faint firelight before him casting a glow on his handsome face, and for a moment, I was lost in a daze. The first time I had heard of him was at a palace banquet. A soldier clad in battle armor had knelt before the feast, reporting that Xiaohuayu had cut off the enemy general's head and won a great victory. At that time, I had thought he must be a cold-blooded killer, a Yama from the underworld. I never could have imagined that a few months later, I would meet him on Green Mountain, 10 li outside the capital. He had shot a wolf dead right in front of me, and left without so much as a word of thanks from me. Then, another year passed, on my way back to the capital from my maternal grandfather's house. I had run into bandits and been forced to hide in the mountains, where I had found Xiaohuayu, unconscious and severely wounded in a cave. In truth, I had lived as a boy since I was a child. Chastity and honor had never meant anything to me. But after that day, when I had undressed him to cool his fever, I had felt something shift inside me. Something had changed. Xiaohuayu. I squatted down beside him, calling his name in a soft whisper. He did not even twitch an eyelid. I let out another sigh. "You promised me you would return safely." 14. Xiaohuayu woke just as I was holding his dagger, facing off against a black wolf at the cave's entrance. The wolf had been pacing at the mouth of the cave for a long while. Driven by extreme hunger, it now opened its bloodthirsty jaws and lunged at me. I let out a scream. Before I could react, Xiaohuayu reached around from behind me, wrapping his hand around mine, and drove the dagger straight into the wolf's neck. Warm blood splattered across my face. I stared blankly, my eyes wide open. The black wolf crumpled to the ground with a thud. "You can't even bring yourself to kill a wolf, yet you want to fight on the battlefield." Xiaohuayu's hoarse voice came from behind me. It was like rough rice paper brushing against the softest part of my heart. A surge of overwhelming grievance washed over me, all the emotions I had buried deep inside pouring out at once. Father had said I was a son, not a daughter. Boys do not shed tears easily. So since I was a child, I had always put on a carefree front, acting as if I did not care about anything. I had only cried 3 times in my life, all hidden away under the covers, alone. But now, I stared down at the tattered, filthy coarse dress I wore. Just for a moment, let me be a woman, just one moment. I turned and buried my face in Xiaohuayu's arms, not arguing with him, and sobbed softly, my teeth sinking into my lip. Xiaohuayu seemed caught off guard by my reaction, freezing in place for a moment. Only after a while did he lift a hand and pat my back gently. "It's all right, it's all right." His voice softened too, like a light breeze skimming the lake surface. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." He repeated the words over and over again, each one falling straight into my heart. Perhaps it was the sudden release of all the tension I'd been holding on to. I drifted off into a deep sleep just like that. When I opened my eyes again, it was daylight. Xiaohuayu, bare-chested, had picked a few wild fruits and returned. I had to admit it. His physique was perfect, sharply defined, with rugged, strong lines. Even the feel of his skin beneath my fingers was exquisite. At the thought, I quickly reined in my wandering mind. Neither of us mentioned what had happened the day before. After a short rest, we set off back to the camp. 3 days had already passed. I feared the news of my death had spread throughout the military camp long ago. "You're going back like this?" Before we left, Xiaohuayu glanced at the peasant woman's clothes I was wearing. I finally came to my senses, forcing an awkward laugh. "I completely forgot. I hastened to say the excuse I'd prepared long ago. The gate guards were checking everyone so strictly back then, especially the men passing through. I had no choice but to disguise myself as a woman. How do I look? Convincing, right? I blinked deliberately at him, putting on a coquettish act. He averted his gaze, the tips of his ears flushing pink. Not at all. 15. Xiaohuayu's injuries were serious. He had barely managed to stagger back to the camp before collapsing again. He hadn't let out a single groan the entire way back, and I'd thought his wounds were improving. Fortunately, they were all external injuries. The military physician prescribed a few medicinal decoctions to bring down his fever, saying he would be fine after a few days of rest. I just felt terribly guilty. So since his arm injury made it hard for him to move, I took care of almost everything for him. As luck would have it, Xie Huazhong burst in just as I was helping Xiaohuayu get dressed. "Brother, they said you were wounded." Her voice trailed off abruptly behind me. My hand, fastening Xiaohuayu's belt, froze mid-movement. It seemed Luluor hadn't been talking complete nonsense after all. Anyone walking in on this scene now would surely think Xiaohuayu and I were lovers of the same sex. I shot him a glare. If he hadn't insisted I help him put on his outer robe, this never would have happened. "Miss Xie, what a surprise." I turned around awkwardly, only to see a woman standing behind Xie Huazhong. "Princess Shuya is here too." 16. Xie Huazhong was here. Shuya was here too, overnight. I became the talk of the entire military camp, the subject of every soldier's after-meal gossip. Young Master Shen is something else, 2 beautiful women fighting over him. I walked past the man and kicked him to the ground. "Watch your tongue, or General Xie will have it cut out," I warned him through gritted teeth. Then I trudged off again to wait on Xiaohuayu, my face long. If I'd felt a little resentful about taking care of him before, now his tent was the only safe haven I had. "You don't seem to like Huazhong much." Xiaohuayu lay on his side on the couch, watching me with a smile. "I dare not, I dare not." "Then you don't like Princess Shuya." "I dare not, I dare not." I wrung out a cloth and walked over to him, my heart heavy with frustration. I'd lived 18 years. Never once had I thought women could be such a hassle. "Then do you intend to marry them both?" I waved my hands hastily. "I don't have such good fortune." Xiaohuayu lay back down, letting me wipe his arm. His eyes crinkling with a smile, a hint of mischief hidden in their depths that I failed to notice. He spoke softly. "If that's the case, I have an idea." I looked up at him. "What idea?" No sooner had the words left my mouth.
19. Xiaohuayu was leaving the city again. Even though I was still angry with him, thinking of what had happened last time, I couldn't help but warn him, "Be careful." He didn't even lift his head. "You're coming too." I froze for a moment. Then it hit me, he was actually allowing me to go to the battlefield. I immediately leaned in close. "Really, really?" He took a small troop of men and me, saying we were going to scout out the enemy's military situation. And then what happened? Xie Huazhong sat under the peach blossom tree, her chin resting in her hands, asking me. I took a sip of tea, awkwardly straightening my messy skirt. Then I died, of course. We'd walked into an enemy ambush at a mountain pass. At the time, I'd braced myself for a fierce battle, determined not to hold the others back. Never did I expect it to be an elaborate ruse staged by Xiaohuayu himself, a ploy to let me fake my death and escape, a golden cicada shedding its shell. Xie Huazhong patted my head gently, a hint of pity in her eyes. "Adu, my silly Adu, from now on, you can finally be your true self. Though it does mean my brother got the better of this deal." End of main text. Xiaohuayu's extra chapter. When I was 8 years old, my parents both died in battle, leaving only my younger sister Xie Huazhong and me to depend on each other. Life was hard without my parents' protection, living under the roof of relatives. I first met Shendu when I was 14, she was only 10, to claim the military pay owed to my family. My uncle sent me to the military camp. Xie Huazhong cried her heart out outside the camp gates. That was when Shendu appeared. He handed Xie Huazhong a handkerchief. saying it was a good thing for a man to build his career and render meritorious service. A delicate, exquisitely beautiful young master, dressed in fine silk and luxurious clothes, he had no idea of the hardships of the world. At that moment, I vowed that one day, I would let Xie Huajong live a life like his. So I fought, day after day, year after year, killing enemy after enemy on the battlefield, climbing the ranks step by step, until I became the feared Yama that everyone cowered before. I saw Shendu again on my way back to the capital. The little master had grown into a young man, yet he'd been scared to tears by a wild wolf. Pathetic. By then, I had moved into the general's mansion, and Xie Huajong had become the general's younger sister. Even if the spoiled, idle Shendu wanted to marry her, he'd have to ask for my permission first. Fortunately, Xie Huajong said she thought Shendu was an idiot, not worth a second glance. A lazy good-for-nothing who only knew how to drink and fool around all day. She was right, Shendu would never be my brother-in-law. She also said I paid far too much attention to Shendu. Ridiculous. I was a great general. If I were to pay attention to anyone, it would be the beautiful women of the capital. I merely envied his fair, smooth, delicate skin, a stark contrast to my own body, covered in scars. But after Xie Huajong said that, for some reason, I found myself looking for Shendu in every crowd I was in. This wouldn't do. He was a man. I was a man too. The Xie family line could not end with me, so I accepted a military order and left the capital again. It was a silent assassination. All my personal guards died protecting me, against all odds. I fled into a cave and lost consciousness. I only remember someone calling my name, begging me not to die, a voice, neither too deep nor too high, familiar, and sweet to the ear. Sadly, I felt as if I were wrapped in a ball of fire, unable to open my eyes no matter how hard I tried. Finally, that person pressed their cold body against mine, soft, boneless. It was a woman. That couldn't be allowed, but no matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't open my eyes. I don't know how long it was before I stirred, catching a blurry glimpse of a figure hurrying away. To repay a life-saving grace would ruin the young lady's reputation. To not repay it would leave me with a lifetime of guilt. So I secretly investigated, and discovered something astonishing. Shendu was actually a woman. I was not a homosexual. That night, I was overjoyed, drinking 3 full jars of wine to celebrate. Brother, Xie Huajong stamped her foot. I don't like Shendu, he's so frivolous and insolent. I could punch him into the moat in an instant. Silly little sister, for your brother's happiness, just endure a little longer. But I couldn't say that out loud. I coughed twice. I only told you to befriend him, not marry him. What are you afraid of? Fortunately, her sacrifice was all for a reason. You knew all along. Shendu lay in my arms, lifting her head in shock as I spoke of the past, bumping her forehead against my chin. Her skin was soft and delicate. It must have hurt terribly. I ruffled her hair gently. Don't worry. No one knows but me. How did you find out? Her eyes sparkled brightly. I should have known long ago. What boy had such mesmerizing eyes that could drown a person in them? Seeing I said nothing, she pressed on. How exactly did you find out? I narrowed my eyes. If I told her I'd stumbled upon her bathing at the villa, I'd surely be sleeping in the study tonight. Naturally, because your husband is clever. She didn't believe me, yet she didn't ask further, only nuzzled closer in my arms. Luckily you found out. Luckily I found out. Otherwise, she would have been doomed to live her whole life as Shendu, the unruly son of the Prime Minister. How are father and mother? After a long while, her muffled voice came. I spoke softly. They are well now. They hope you will not blame them, and that from now on, you can wear silk skirts openly and be the true woman you are. The person in my arms fell silent all at once. Moments later, soft sobs escaped her. She was always like this. Even when she cried, she held it in. It broke my heart. I never blamed them. Her voice was choked with tears. They did everything they could to keep me alive. That year, His Majesty had fallen under the spell of sorcery. A sorcerer claimed that all baby girls born on the 13th day of the 8th lunar month must be put to death, lest the purple star shift and jeopardize the nation's fate. So Shendu had been raised as a boy from the moment she was born. The Prime Minister had risked high treason to protect her, and never once resented that she was a daughter. Shindu was not one to cry easily, but when she did, she was terribly hard to soothe. It took me a long time to calm her down. Her eyes were red and watery as she looked up at me. Xiaohuayu, can we have 2 children? My Adam's apple bobbed, my hand on her back began to wander restlessly. Yes, can one of them take my surname, Shin? Yes, what did it matter if they all took the surname Shin? They would all be my blood. I kissed her damp eyelashes, my voice hoarse. Then we have to start working hard right now.